Hey everyone, Team Sorcerers here, and welcome back to another episode of What If Wednesday. And this time we're going to talk about another judge's decision which people thought was bullshit. The fight between Chaos 2 and Stinger in the grand final of Series 4. There were some mixed opinions about this one, and yeah, like I said, lots of people felt Stinger should have won, but yeah, I have no strong opinions of that really, but I'm actually kind of glad that Chaos 2 did win and went on to keep the title. Because I'll explain why as we get into the what if. So this brings about the question, what if Stinger won that judge's decision? How much would have changed? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. So obviously this would mean that Chaos 2 loses its championship title, but does automatically finish third because Hypnodisc is still too badly damaged to carry on. So yeah, that's that, and that would mean that Stinger will face Pussycat in the grand final, and yeah, they face off like 1 year early, because obviously they did fight each other in the All-Stars of Extreme 1. Now, unfortunately, I don't see Stinger winning this. Yeah, Pussycat is capable of doing more damage, which it does do, and yeah, Stinger can't really do much against Pussycat, apart from hit it with the mace a few times, but Pussycat is able to damage it a bit and just rip the tyres, which are Stinger's most vulnerable part, and yeah, it goes to the judges, and Stinger loses on a decision, and Pussycat is crowned the Series 4 champion, much to my dismay, considering it knocked out Razor and Hypnodisc, my two favourites to win the UK title. So yeah, I would not have been happy about that, personally. Yeah, that would have been a very successful year, because obviously it also won Celebrity Robot Wars, and yeah, it just wouldn't have lost any fights at all that year, yeah, which would have been absolutely incredible. Just straight up going undefeated. I mean, not even Chaos 2 went completely undefeated in 1999 and 2000. I mean, yeah, it did win the main series back-to-back twice, but it also did lose the World Championship quarter-final match against Razor and the first round of the Northern Annihilator. So, yeah, going into Series 5, the top 5 seeds would have been different. We would have had Pussycat at number 1, Stinger 2, Chaos 2 3, Hypnodisc 4, and Razor 5, and then everyone else would have stayed exactly the same. So, yeah, again, they do have their same first round battles, but are in different heats, so yeah, don't worry, I'll talk you through it. So, Heat A, Pussycat and the Executioner are there instead of Chaos 2 and Storm Force. So yeah, it plays out with Pussycat beating Executioner, Smidsy beating Obsidian, 8645T beating T-Bone, and Steel Avenger beating Tartan Terror. Sorry, there was stuff on the floor. So, next round, Pussycat faces Steel Avenger, and this is kind of a rematch from the tag team final of of Extreme 1, only Deitor and Suicidal Tendencies aren't there. So, yeah, I don't see Steel Avenger defeating Pussycat here. It's too fast, too manoeuvrable, and can get damage in more easily. In fact, in this classic clash of Saw against Axe, Pussycat just has an easier time of it than against Dominator 2 in Series 4. So, yeah, Pussycat just keeps coming at Steel Avenger again and again, and even though it's not likely Steel Avenger would have been immobilised, it does go to a judge's decision and Pussycat wins. And then it faces off against Smidsy in the Heat final, and this is another rematch from the very first Mayhem in Extreme 1. So, yeah, I don't think Smidsy would beat Pussycat here. I mean, it is similar to Tornado in a way, and while Pussycat did struggle against Tornado, Smidsy is easier to deal with. I mean, it's not as quick as Tornado, and I don't know, it's just easier to do stuff to. So, I mean, I guess Smidsy would keep trying to push Pussycat around, maybe even get a hit with the rear disc, but I don't think Smidsy would get a chance to hit Pussycat. And again, just like the previous fight, Pussycat would just keep coming at Smidsy from all sides, getting hits in with the saw, doing some significant damage. I know Smidsy's not that easy to damage, but it is easy for Pussycat to get to, and yeah, again, goes to the judges, and Pussycat goes through to the series semi-finals. So next heat, Heat B, Chaos 2 and Storm Force are in this one, instead of Hypnodisc and Black Widow. So that fight plays out the same way, so do the other fights. Here, Atomic beats Can Opener, Bulldog Breed beats Juggernaut 2, and Lamsey beats Warwatt. Now, of course, this results in a rematch between Chaos 2 and Atomic. And in a shock turn of events, Atomic would win this one. I genuinely think Atomic would win this matchup, even if it was at this stage of the competition, based on how Chaos 2's fights with Bigger Brother and Danton Kia went. In a clash of flippers, they do flip each other over, but Chaos 2 just wouldn't really get a chance to flip them out of the arena. I mean, it didn't have a chance to against Bigger Brother and Danton Kia, really, so this would go the same way for Atomic. I feel like it would get to a point where Chaos 2 would just run out of gas, get flipped over, and just be left on its back to be counted out. Of course, I could be wrong, but based on how Chaos 2 was in Series 5 and 6 era, I genuinely think that's what would happen. So, yeah, it's a major surprise. Chaos 2, former champion, number 3 seed, eliminated right there and then. And Atomic goes through to the Heat final and will face off against Bulldog Breed. So it's another clash of flippers, but I feel like Atomic would be able to beat Bulldog Breed here. Well, I just don't think it's as quick and manoeuvrable as Atomic. Thus, because this is Bulldog breed free, I'm not really sure it can self-right based on the shape, which is hard to say since that version of Bulldog breed has never been flipped. But I feel like Atomic could easily flip it over, just leave it there, or just get it out the arena. I just don't think Bulldog breed would have a chance to do that. So, yeah, Atomic goes through to the series semi-finals. Then Heat C, we've got Razor and Big Nipper there instead of Stinger and Hippopotamus. So, yeah, that plays out. Stinger beats Big Nipper, S3 beats Plunderbird 5, much to my dismay, because I actually do like the Plunderbird team and the machines. General Carnage 2 beats Gazundabot, and Mousetrap beats Shredder, or rather, Shredder beat itself. So yeah, this would mean that Razor would face General Carnage 2 and crush it, and then S3 takes out Mousetrap. Oh God. Sorry, nose is really tickly. I swear I still have hay fever. Kind of. So yeah, this would mean that Razor and S3 would meet in the Heat final and meet 2 rounds earlier than in the actual timeline, and this plays out exactly the same way, basically, with Razor coming at S3 right away, crushing it, stopping the disc working, and Razor goes through to the semi-finals, and yeah, S3 doesn't even make it to the semi-finals in this timeline. And then, of course, nothing changes until Heat K, where finally Hypnodisc is up. So yeah, it beats Black Widow, then Widow's Revenge beats Something, Destructor Bubble beats Accident, and Suicidal Tendencies beats Rick, until it has engine troubles and has to pull out and Rick is reinstated. So yeah, this would mean that Hypnodisc faces off against Widow's Revenge and trashes it, basically. Perhaps to an equal extent to what Razor and Matilda did in the actual timeline. Then Rick, of course, beats Destructor Bubble, then Hypnodisc and Rick meet in the Heat final. But of course, I don't see Rick beating Hypnodisc. I mean, it does put up a good fight, but yeah, Hypnodisc would just defeat Rick with not too many problems, and Hypnodisc is through to the semi-finals. Then, the last heat, Stinger is up. So yeah, it beats Hippopotamus, while of course Terahertz beats Ming 3, Clodhopper beats Twister, and Fluffy beats 101. Now, Stinger would then go up against Clodhopper and just clobber it, basically. Yeah, it's a walker, and Stinger wouldn't have any trouble against a walker. Just keep hammering it, bashing the sides, and Stinger wins for a judge's decision, and then goes on to face Fluffy in the Heat final. Again, they meet 1 year early, and it sort of goes mostly a similar way to their fight in the actual timeline. And I feel like Fluffy actually would come out on top here. Because, I don't know, I feel like in Series 6 the only reason Fluffy lost was because it got clobbered by Mr. Psycho, and then after like a minute or two it just conked out. And obviously Mr. Psycho doesn't exist yet here, so yeah, Fluffy just easily damages Stinger, just keeps coming at it, clobbering it. I guess Stinger would lose power on one side for one bit, and then another hit brings it back to life. But even then, Stinger just stands no chance here and gets eliminated, which is another huge surprise. Having the runner-up from the previous year get knocked out at this stage, and Fluffy goes through to the series semi-finals. So, yeah, it's almost the same semi-final lineup, only Fluffy is in the semi-finals instead of S3. So, oh yeah, and Atomic, of course, is there instead of Chaos too. So, let's see how this would play out. So, yeah, again, we're still following the path as much as possible here to the actual timeline. So, Razor would face Bigger Brother, and Razor would beat Bigger Brother like 3 rounds early. Then we've got Pussycat against Wild Thing. I mean, Wild Thing might put up a decent fight. It does depend whether or not it would be able to chop any of Pussycat's wheels off with the disc, but I don't think they'd get a chance to. I mean, Pussycat would just outspeed it, maybe hit the sides with the saw, maybe even chop off a side spike. Who knows? But I'm not so sure Wild Thing would get a chance to really get at Pussycat. I feel like Pussycat would be able to stay out of the way quite easily, especially considering, you know, David Gribble, R.I.P. Sorry, a fantastic driver, really is. I don't know, I'm still not too sure Wild Thing would be able to get at Pussycat's wheels or casters. Well, maybe not that easily anyway. Or would it? It's difficult to say, considering the two robots have never fought each other. Yeah, I reckon Pussycat would win on a judge's decision. And then in the other fight we have Hypnodisc against Spawn again. And I feel like Hypnodisc would be able to stay out of the way of the big flipper quite easily. And leave lots of tears in the side of Spawn again. Maybe even cause it to break down, I don't know. But it is a possibility, considering that S3 was able to immobilise Spawn again in the actual timeline. So, yeah, with this in mind, Hypnodisc goes through, and we have almost the same losers melee, only Bigger Brother is there instead of S3. And I feel like Bigger Brother would come out on top and beat Wild Thing and Spawn again. I mean, yeah, there is a chance Spawn again could flip Bigger Brother over and out of the arena, but I'm not sure it would come to that, considering it's not 100% here. Even if it goes to a judge's decision, I think Bigger Brother would come out on top here. yeah, it's back in the competition. So who we got now? Like Pussycat, Razor, Hypnodisc, Bigger Brother. Um, our Bigger Brother would get paired against Pussycat here, since it already fought Razor, and well, they can't really pit the two highest ranked robots against each other. So yeah, Pussycat would face Bigger Brother, and Hypnodisc would face Razor. I did already talk about what would happen in a clash between Razor and Hypnodisc in a previous episode. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I definitely did cover that. Even though in Series 5 era it would depend on who gets to whom first, but I actually do feel like Hypnodisc would win here. Yeah, there is a chance Razor could grab Hypnodisc, but I think Hypnodisc would tear into the sides of Razor, maybe take off a back wheel, and it would cause Razor to break down in the same way it did against Pussycat in the grudge match fight. Of course, I could be wrong here, but yeah, I do still feel like Hypnodisc would come out on top. So Hypnodisc is through to the grand final. Meanwhile, I think Bigger Brother would beat Pussycat. I'm not sure the saw would do too much damage here, but it could play out in a similar way to the Chaos 2 versus Pussycat fight. It's unlikely Bigger Brother would get Pussycat out the arena, but I feel like it would flip Pussycat all over the place. And Pussycat would struggle a bit here, and ultimately gets defeated, loses its title. Bigger Brother goes through to the grand final. I'll probably come back to this semi-final and see what would happen if Wild Thing beat Pussycat in that situation, because I'm still not 100% sure who would win that fight. So yeah, we come to the other semi-final, where yeah, the fight between Really Big Cheese and Dominator 2 still happens, and we all know how that went. Then we have Atomic against Firestorm 3. Now, again, it would be a bit of a flipper frenzy, but I think because of the link problem Firestorm had, I feel like it would get to a point where Atomic could flip Firestorm over, and the impact would be enough to knock the link out, considering 2 hits from Hypnodisc loosened the link in the actual timeline. But I feel like it would sort of go over like that, and surely that would be enough to immobilise Firestorm 3. But yeah, that's what I think would happen here. Meanwhile, Fluffy then takes on Panic Attack, and yeah, Panic Attack just has a really hard time considering its interference problem and the fact that Fluffy could significantly damage Panic Attack, considering it's not easy to damage anyway. So yeah, Fluffy wins this encounter, and we have the same losers melee line up, and Firestorm comes out on top, like in the actual timeline. So yeah, who have we got now? Let's see, we've got Dominator 2, Firestorm, Atomic, Fluffy. So So at this point, Firestorm would face off against Fluffy, and Atomic would face off against Dominator 2. Now, usually from what I've seen, Dominator 2 can somehow win encounters with robots with flippers, but I'm not so sure that would be the case with Atomic. I mean, it's hard to say whether or not an axe could penetrate Atomic's armour. I mean, maybe it could. I mean, Hypnodisc was able to rip through it, so... but then again, an axe is kind of a different situation, I guess. But I feel like Dominator 2 would just flip... No, Atomic would flip Dominator 2 all over the place. And even get it out the arena. And I guess this would be the start of Atomic's out of the arena days. So yeah, I genuinely think Atomic would win this encounter and go through to the grand final. Meanwhile, Firestorm takes on Fluffy and just has an easy time of it. I mean, Fluffy can't really damage Firestorm, well, at all, if not that easily, and Firestorm would just flip it over, like, time and time again, and this could cause Fluffy to break down, considering it has a history of breakdowns, or it might survive to a judge's decision, but either way, I don't think Fluffy would win here, and I think Firestorm would win this encounter and go through to the grand final. So it's almost the exact same grand final lineup, only Atomic is there instead of Razor. Now, because at this point they wanted to have different semi-finalists, well, one robot from a different semi-final face off against each other, this would mean that Hypnodisc would face Atomic and Firestorm would face Bigger Brother. So, with this in mind, well, the fight between Hypnodisc and Atomic goes the same way as in the actual timeline, with Atomic getting absolutely trashed, and its best run yet sadly comes to an end here. So Hypnodisc goes through to the grand final. Meanwhile, Firestorm and Bigger Brother face off against each other, and it goes pretty much the same way as their actual All-Stars fight in Extreme 2. So yeah, I don't see Bigger Brother winning this, so Firestorm goes through to the grand final. And now there would be a playoff, but because Atomic is too badly damaged, it would have to forfeit and finish fourth, therefore making Bigger Brother automatically finish third. Now, I say this because obviously, as we know, in Extreme 2, Atomic did win its Mayhem, but couldn't actually take part in the second Annihilator, so Fighting Talk / Hippopotamus took its place. And I remember Jonathan Pierce said it was because of mechanical failure, but what actually happened was Hypnodisc damaged Atomic so much that it couldn't continue and wasn't able to do it. And of course, a lot of the fights from Extreme were filmed after Series 5 for some reason. So, yeah, that's that. So, and again, we have Hypnodisc and Firestorm facing off in the grand final, and I think I already covered what would happen in this scenario. So it goes the same way as the third place playoff. In the actual timeline, only Firestorm has a working flipper, and they would both either crash into the pit at the same time, or Firestorm would launch Hypnodisc into the pit. Either way, Firestorm 3 becomes the champion of Series 5. Unfortunate that Hypnodisc missed out again, but considering both of them are long-time favourite robots, I would have still been happy that Firestorm won this. So going into Series 6, the seeds are a little bit different, and it does add a small complication considering Atomic is in Series 6 now, and from what I understand, it tried to qualify for Series 6 in the actual timeline, but didn't quite qualify. But this time, Atomic is here. So now the seeds would be 1 Firestorm, 2 Hypnodisc, 3 Bigger Brother, 4 Atomic, and it would be 5 Razor, so Razor would still be seeded 5, 6 Dominator 2, and Fluffy would be seeded 7th, and then Panic Attack would still be 8th, Wild Thing would still be 9th, Spawn again would be seeded 10th. But then there's the question of the other seeds. Chaos 2 would probably be seeded 11th here, considering, well, it is the Series 3 champion, but now I'm not so sure about Stinger and Tornado. I suppose Stinger would be seeded 12th here, considering it did finish second in the 4-4s in this timeline. So, yeah, S3 and Tornado are not seeded in this timeline. So, yeah, again, it does add a complication here. Okay, so here's how it would have to be worked out. Atomic would have to go into S3's heat, and one of the robots that would have lost in the first round would simply be replaced by Atomic. Meanwhile, Stinger and Tornado would simply have to swap heats, as well as the robots they fight in the first round. So don't worry, I'll talk you through it, it's fine. So other than that, the heats remain the same, but in a different order. So Firestorm's one again would be Heat A, and Firestorm wins that. Then Bigger Brother's heat would be Heat B, and Bigger Brother wins that. Razor's heat would be Heat C, and Razor wins that. So now, Heat D will basically have Fluffy, Double Trouble, Demolition Man, and Can Opener. So, yeah, they'd be in Heat D, and so would Tornado, along with Terror Bull, Inshreddable, and Edgehog. Yeah, that's the easiest way to figure this out. So, yeah, obviously, Fluffy and Double Trouble win their fight, Tornado and Inshredable win their other one. So then Fluffy would then go up against Inshredable, but because Inshredable is in bad condition at this point, it's an easy win for Fluffy. Meanwhile, Tornado would face off against Double Trouble and beat it quite easily. So then Fluffy and Tornado face off in the Heat final, and unfortunately Fluffy doesn't stand a chance here. It had an amazing run in Series 5, but unfortunately that comes to an end by Tornado just pushing Fluffy around too much. And I feel like Tornado would use the scoop here, considering it did against Hypnodisc in the real timeline. So yeah, Fluffy gets shoved around too much and even ends up breaking down, because yeah, classic Fluffy, Tornado wins this heat. So, and then of course Heat E, Wild Things eat Heat, nothing changes there. And then Chaos 2's Heat comes up, and that is now Heat F instead of Heat C, and Danton Kia wins that. So now Heat G, we have Stinger, Thermidor 2, 13 Black, and Chompalot here. Stinger and 13 Black win, of course. Then of course we've got the other one where Anarchy, Revolution 2, Judge Shred 2.5, and 4 face off against each other, and of course Anarchy and 4 win. Then Stinger faces 4, and 4 would struggle quite a bit here against Stinger, and Stinger would win on a judge's decision. Then Anarchy would face off against 13 Black, and even though Anarchy is the best walker ever in Robot Wars, I don't think it would beat 13 Black here. Sure, there is the flipper at the back, but because walkers are generally so slow, they wouldn't get a chance to use it. So 13 Black just keeps hitting Anarchy on the side, doing some damage, and 13 Black wins here. And then we have the same heat final. Stinger and 13 Black face off. 13 Black wins. Then Heat H, Spawn against Heat, that doesn't change. Same with Heat I, Terahertz comes out on top. Then J, Dominator 2, comes out on top. And then we come to the heat with Atomic and S3. I honestly feel like Atomic would replace Armadillo here. I mean, no disrespect, but I'm not quite sure how Armadillo did qualify, but regardless, Atomic replaces it, and is it the same fight as S3, Shredder, and Rhubarb. And yeah, S3 and Atomic are easily the strongest robots here. There would be a lot of flipping by Atomic, but Rhubarb does still break down here, and Shredder gets shredded. Meanwhile, Chromalot and the Alien win their other fight. And then, of course, S3 goes on to beat Chromalot, and Atomic beats the Alien with not too many problems. And then in the heat final, well, it's hard to say, but maybe S3 would get 1 or 2 hits in, but it wouldn't be enough to stop Atomic. I feel like Atomic would be able to push it around and just flip S3 out the arena. That's genuinely what I think would happen. I mean, hey, if Firestorm 4 can do it, Atomic can do it too. Same with Bigger Brother. So yeah, Lost Heat, Hypnodisc's Heat. And yeah, that plays out the same way. Hypnodisc goes through. Now, semi-final 1. This is interesting. So I think Firestorm would face Wild Thing. Then Bigger Brother would face Danton Kier, and Razor would fight Tornado. Because the winners of those respective heats do face off in the actual timeline, so that's the lineup I think would happen. Just to follow the path as much as possible. Or maybe Razor would face Wild Thing, just to try and really match it as much as possible, and Firestorm fights Tornado. I suppose that would make more sense to have Razor fight Wild Thing and Firestorm fight Tornado. Just to really follow that rule, where the same paths must be followed as much as possible. Or would it, based on their seeding? Yeah, no, that would be the case. So, yeah, this would mean that Firestorm and Tornado meet 2 rounds early, and it plays out the same way as in the actual timeline. And yeah, Firestorm gets beaten into the loser's melee. Bigger Brother against Danton Kier. I feel like Danton Kier would be the stronger robot here. I'm sure Bigger Brother could flip Danton Kier over from the side, but I feel like it's easier for Danton Kier to get under Bigger Brother and flip it out the arena, which is what I think would happen. So, yeah, surprising turn of events. 2 of the grand finalists from last time are in the loser's melee. And then, of course, Razor beats Wild Thing, just like in the actual timeline. So yeah, we've got Firestorm, Bigger Brother, and Wild Thing all in one battle royale. But Firestorm, of course, comes out on top here. It is the stronger robot of the 3, and the reigning champion gets back into the competition. So, now we've got Firestorm, Razor, Tornado, and Danton Kier. Now, because Tornado can't fight Firestorm again, it would end up fighting Razor instead, and that plays out the same way as in the actual timeline. And Tornado goes through to the grand final. Again, much to a lot of people's dismay. So, and yeah, because Razor doesn't come back for Series 7, it means that in this timeline, it sadly never wins the UK title, yet alone goes to the grand final, which is just insane for the world champion. And then, of course, Firestorm beats Danton Kier, like in the actual timeline, but in the main series, instead of Extreme 2. So, semi-final 2, we now have Atomic facing 13 Black, and I think Atomic would beat 13 Black. Hypnodisc beats Dominator 2 by a judge's decision, and then, well, Terahertz beats Spawn again, like in the actual timeline. So yeah, the loser's melee is 13 Black, Dominator 2, and Spawn again. Now 13 Black does try and stay away from Spawn again here, considering it can't self-right. But then again, I guess they'll be lucky because Spawn again is still having its internal problems. I mean, yeah, I guess 13 Black would get a couple of hits on the side, and Dominator 2 gets in some strikes with the axe, but yeah, it's difficult for Spawn again to really get into the action here. Yeah, 13 Black does hit Dominator 2 on the side as well, and clobber it a bit. And it goes sort of a similar way to their All-Stars fight, only Matilda isn't involved in this one. Or would it be? I don't know. It's hard to say whether the House Robot lineup would have been the same throughout the fights in this scenario. But either way, I definitely don't think Spawn again is winning this. And I actually think 13 Black would actually not do that. Come out on top and beat the both of them on a judge's decision and go through. So yeah, we've now got 2 seeded robots and 2 unseeded robots here. So I think 13 Black would go up against Hypnodisc here, while Atomic takes on Terahertz. Now, I'm not sure Atomic would be able to beat Terahertz. I think it would struggle a bit. I don't think it would get to a point where Atomic could flip it out the arena, considering it's generally difficult to get in underneath Terahertz, so it would get some significant hits in with the axe, maybe even break the flipper. Yeah, either way, yeah, it is a bad time for Atomic. I just think it would struggle a bit, and I think Terahertz would still prevail. Meanwhile, there's a clash of the spinners with Hypnodisc and 13 Black. It's difficult to say who would win, but it would be a pretty even fight. Hypnodisc would have to get some lucky hits in on the side, and I feel like it would. When the discs collide, I feel like 13 Black's discs would have some tears in them. Not enough to stop them spinning though, but it is still significant damage. And I feel like Hypnodisc would get in some careful coordinated attacks in on 13 Black. But yeah, I think because of some good driving, I don't think it would get to a point where 13 Black would take off any of Hypnodisc's wheels, and I think ultimately it would go to a judge's decision and Hypnodisc would just scrape the win. Or I could be wrong, who knows. I'm sure someone could correct me if I'm wrong about this. So yeah, it's almost the same grand final lineup again, only Hypnodisc is there instead of Razor. So at this point I feel like Firestorm would face Terahertz and Tornado would face Hypnodisc. Now, when Firestorm and Terahertz clash here, I think Terahertz would come out on top. Alright, yes, in the actual timeline, Terahertz did break down against Firestorm, but that was more likely because it couldn't be fully repaired from the fight with Razor. But this time we have a healthy Terahertz here, which clobbers Firestorm and just immobilises it, and Terahertz wins and goes through to the grand final. Meanwhile, Tornado unfortunately does beat Hypnodisc in the same way it did in the actual timeline. So Tornado goes through to the final. And then I feel like we would actually get a playoff here for the first time since Series 2. Although both robots seem a bit worse for wear after their fights, but Firestorm would once again come out on top here, because I really don't think this version of Hypnodisc would be able to beat Firestorm here. So Firestorm takes third place and Hypnodisc finishes fourth again. And then I feel like we'd be in for the shortest grand final fight in the history of Robot Wars. This would play out the exact same way as the Challenge Belt final in Extreme 2, where Tornado pushes Terahertz around quite easily, quickly opens the pit, and then just shoves it in, just like that. So Tornado still becomes the Series 6 champion. Right, now for Series 7, which also has a bit of a different lineup, because this time Atomic would be seeded here again, and not Ming. But we would have the same robots in that series, but there'd have to be a switch around. But the seeds would be one Tornado, obviously, and because... Oh wait, hold on though. Actually, this is an easy fix. Because Terahertz would be seeded second, but it didn't compete, and I don't know. I mean, they did stage a surprise elimination here, but it just didn't make sense to have Terahertz seeded if it wasn't ready to fight. So yeah, it would make sense to just not have Terahertz seeded. So yeah, again, it's an easy fix. Atomic is seeded instead of Terahertz. So yeah. Anyway, we'd have 1 Tornado, 2 Firestorm, 3 I'm trying to think here. Let's see, at this point we had Danton Kier, 13 Black, Atomic, Hypnodisc doesn't come back. I guess Atomic would be seeded third here. 4, 13 Black, 5, Danton Kier, 6, Spawn again. I need to think about the others, because Wild Thing and Dominator 2 don't return. Oh yeah, actually, never mind, this is easy. So yeah, forget that. Bigger Brother would be seeded 6th, and Spawn again would be seeded 7th, and everyone else remains the same. But then we'd have to find a replacement for yeah, we'd need to find a replacement for Atomic in Smidsy's fight, but I'm not quite sure who that could be. Yeah, this actually really complicates things. Not without terahertz. I mean, yeah, so much for an easy fix. But it just wouldn't make sense to have for terahertz to be seeded second and have all that build-up and anticipation waiting for him, only to not show himself. Then again, maybe it would be easier to have terahertz seeded second in this timeline and still kind of appear. Okay, so in which case then, Ming Dynasty is not seeded. But would take Atomic's place. That's really the easiest way to go about this, really. So yeah, it would mean that Firestorm would be seeded third, then Atomic stays the fourth seed. 5-13 black, 6 Danzon Kier, 7 Bigger Brother, 8. I'm so bad at this. 8 Spawn Again, 9 Panic Attack, 10 Pussycat, 11 Behemoth, 12 Exterminator, 13 Bulldog Breed, 14 Smidsy, and 15 Thermidor 2. I don't even know about coming back to the Wild Thing and Pussycat fight after this, because what I try and do is go with my best guess. That's all these what if scenarios are, they're just best guess. So yeah, that would be that basically. And I feel like it would make sense to have the seeds and their heats in the actual order this time. So yeah, the heat winners would be Tornado, Firestorm, and let's see, I said 13 black was seeded 5th, so yeah, Gravity, Typhoon 2, Tough as Nails, winning Heat E, Mute, Bulldog Breed, Thermidor 2. Then, so that's the first half. Then Storm 2. Right, now we come to Smidsy's heat. And like I said, Ming Dynasty is here, and so yeah, let's go over this. So the fight would have Ming Dynasty, Smidsy, Cygnus X1, and Terra Turtle. But without Atomic, I feel like Smidsy and Cygnus are the strongest robots here. Cygnus would flip Ming over quite easily. Terra Turtle wouldn't be able to damage anyone that easily, and will get pushed around by Smidsy, flipped over by Cygnus. Yeah, Smidsy and Cygnus would go through here. Then Smidsy would go on to beat Mean Streak, and depending on whether or not Hellbent can sell right, I feel like Cygnus X1 could just flip it over quite easily and just keep doing it until it wins. And then Smidsy and Cygnus meet again in the heat final. I'm not sure Cygnus could flip Smidsy over that easily. It would maybe almost do it, but not quite. And I feel like it would get to a point where Smidsy could push it from the side and then use its lifter to flip it over. And because of the shape of Cygnus, it wouldn't be able to self-right. And Smidsy finally goes through to the series semi-finals. Then after that, the winners would be Exterminator, M2, Raging Nightmare, Danton Kier, oh yeah, and of course Atomic would take Ming Dynasty's place in its heat. That I forgot to mention. And I think among that, Ceros, Metalis, Scraptosaur, Saint Aggro, Revolution 3, Megahertz LT, and the Scrapper Atomic is the strongest robot in that heat and would go through. And then, of course, Grim Reaper would win the last heat, since Terahertz isn't there. Oh, and Little Torment has decided to join us. And just look out the window. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we've basically got the same heat winners here. And yeah, we'd have the same fight lineups, the same semi-final lineups, and the rest of the series just plays out the same way, with Typhoon 2 winning. So, yeah, to summarise, the result of Series 4 would obviously be different. Series 5 would play out a lot differently, as would a bit of Series 6. But the only difference is ultimately being Pussycat wins Series 4, Firestorm wins Series 5, Tornado still wins Series 6, and Typhoon 2 still wins Series 7. Well, maybe I could go back to the Pussycat versus Wild Thing fight really quickly. I guess even if a Wild Thing, maybe Wild Thing could take off a caster and a wheel off Pussycat, make it go into the loser's melee, where it would face Spawn again and Bigger Brother, but Pussycat would still probably lose at the hands of Bigger Brother or Spawn again. More likely Bigger Brother. I think it would come out on top, since Spawn again would have some issues there. And who was here at this stage again? It was Razor, Hypnodisc, Wild Thing and Bigger Brother. And I guess in that scenario, Razor would face Wild Thing and beat it, and Bigger Brother would beat Hypnodisc. So Razor would in fact go through here instead of Hypnodisc, and more likely still win Series 5. And I feel like, despite the seeding order, Tornado would still probably win Series 6, and Typhoon 2 would still win Series 7, most probably. Yeah, that's what's more likely to happen. Ooh, Tail. Still try and narrow it down though. So grand finalists would be Razor, Bigger Brother, Atomic, Firestorm 3. So I feel like Razor would beat Atomic, Bigger Brother would, Firestorm would still beat Bigger Brother, and Razor beats Firestorm in an epic grand final. So the seeding order would be switched around a little bit here. So the seeds in order would be Razor, Firestorm 4. Oh wait, there would actually be a playoff here. And I think a healthy Atomic would beat Bigger Brother. So Atomic, Bigger Brother, Hypnodisc would be seeded 5 instead. Otherwise, everyone's basically the same. Yeah, I still think Tornado would win Series 6 here. And yeah, that's pretty much it. God, this has given me a bigger headache than I thought. Even more so when I had this planned in my head. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you later.